Hello, everybody, and good Monday morning. I am Angie Callen, and this is No More Mondays, the podcast where we believe you can have a thriving career or business and an amazing life on your terms. And I get to bring you amazing guests who walk that walk and talk that talk with stories and strategies to help you live and work authentically. And today's guest, she falls smack dab in the bullseye when it comes to living and working authentically. And I can't wait because we have not gotten to talk a lot, but we have a lot of common ground. So this is going to be fun. Brittany Rogars is a speaker, founder, author, and unapologetic voice for ambitious women. Don't you love her already? She's on a mission to help burnout teams stop performing and start leading. If you know her as the CEO of SKF Practice Solutions, where she helps dental teams build systems that actually support their goals. But that is just one layer to this multifaceted human. Brittany built a multi-six-figure business from scratch while pivoting out of survival mode, breaking generational patterns, and growing a brand that is rooted, pun intended, in truth, clarity, and real action. If that isn't living and working authentically, I do not know what is. So if you've ever wondered what it really looks like to start over, pivot, rebuild, scale, all of the above, this conversation is for you. Brittany, welcome to No More Mondays.
Oh my goodness. I don't know who that girl you just described is, but I want to be her friend. She sounds great.
Well, it's a good thing because you are her best friend. I love it so much. The rooted thing came in real time. I was like, oh, we have to go there. Right. I love a good pun and I love a good dad joke, but you have done some pretty amazing things in your life and we're going to talk about them and inspire everyone with them. But I want to start with this consulting business that you've built, because obviously growing anything that comes from our knowledge is not a straight line. So talk to me about your personal pivot into this work.
Yeah. So we say we're going to start at this consulting business, but to start at this consulting business, I actually have to go back a little bit further. So I dipped my toe into the entrepreneur playing field with a natural soap company. Yeah, a little bit of a different track than where I'm at now. And I was doing this because I felt like I had to, like it was for somebody else and it wasn't really my vibe and I hated it. And so I realized that I created, instead of having this like full 9-to-5 job that I went to and I was miserable every day, I had this business that I had to run that I hated and made me miserable every day. And I was like, something has got to give here. And I was laying in bed and I was like, okay, I love certain aspects of my day job. I love dentistry. I love helping give people their smile back. I love teaching teams. I love scaling businesses. How can I take that and everything I love about entrepreneurship, not having a boss, making my own schedule, getting to go to my kids' games and do all the things. And I was like, oh, duh, like I'll be a dental consultant. And I actually started by applying for other dental consulting positions and it didn't work out, thank goodness. And then I decided to create this thing and it happened so like organically and quickly. And it was like, oh, okay, this is obviously where I'm supposed to be, because I went from one day, like, I'm going to start this dental business to, oh my gosh, I need to 2 months in, I need to hire full-time team members because I'm at capacity here. And I created this beautiful niche. I filled a need and it worked out really well. Now, if I were to actually transport back in time to 5 years ago and like watch my business 5 years ago, I would be mortified, I'm sure. But it just felt like this really like natural growth.
Yeah. And I find that is where I think the sweet spot happens. I continue to observe and even find myself that I don't want to say entrepreneurship happens to you, but the right type of entrepreneurship is something like, or the right opportunity you kind of arrive at more so than you kind of like create or go searching for. But the foray into soap first kind of wetted the whistle, I imagine.
Yeah, it did. It was this great, like I loved the freedom of it. I was like, oh, I can do what I want when I want. But it turns out that what I want is not to be getting lye burns in my kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon. And then we pivoted.
Well, okay. So speaking of this pivot, we'll go back a little bit into some of the things that were kind of in your intro, this idea of like the survival mode that survival phase you experience, some of the patterns that you feel like you had to overcome and change? What were some of the things you kind of almost had to like undo or unpack or work through before you could then start growing?
This is a juicy one for me because as I look back, I'm like, oh, I'm still kind of unpacking some of these things a little bit. It's different levels of it now. But when I first started a dental business, for those of you who maybe aren't tooth nerds, it's okay. We still love you. Dentistry is a very conservative business
Mm-hmm.
traditionally. So the fact that I have tattoos and I curse like a sailor and I color outside the lines and I'll dye my hair pink on a random Wednesday afternoon uh, didn't really fit the traditional mold of what a dental professional would look like. So I had to, this is where like the authenticity is your superpower that we were chatting about off cam. It became
Yep.
kind of my self mantra because I learned that, yeah, it is traditionally a more conservative model. However, dentists now are younger than me. And like there, it is this new generation of dentistry that is coming to the forefront and they swear and they have tattoos and they like bad jokes and the office references and like all of these things. And those are my people. And when I started to embrace more who I am, the girl who curses like a sailor and likes pink sparkly things and all this stuff, that's when my business took off, first of all. That's when I
Mm.
felt way more fulfilled at work. That's when I hit the people and I get to work with the people who like I love all of my clients. They are like my friends and I would hang out with them outside of work and if I could. We all live pretty far away. But it's so much more fun and that was one of the hardest things to unpack, but once I finally did and I stopped trying to fit this like weird mold that somebody else made for me,
Yeah.
it became just not only just more fun, but just so empowering and so freeing and more of that freedom that we were talking about. It was just like a giant breath of fresh air.
It is. I love that you are validating something that I tell people, but showing is better than telling. And when you can just own who you are, it tends to attract people. And in your case, it put you early, kind of almost early to market, right? In an environment or in an industry that hadn't yet started the evolution that made you like the clients who are now coming in, but it didn't matter. It was like the right time, the right way. And when we talk about this like survival mode, I think in this context, it's a little bit of like surviving the way you think society tells you you need to survive. And when we talk about authenticity, which is such a buzzy word, which makes me mad because it's my favorite
Mm-hmm.
word and I wish it wasn't a buzzword. But to me, authenticity isn't this idea of like, well, I am just unabrasive, like I am just myself and you have to like accept it. Cause I actually think that's not authentic always. And that like, I'm going to be just abrasive and it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like posturing, but the authenticity is just being okay with who you are and who's going to gravitate towards that and who isn't. And it sounds like that survival mode that you pivoted out of was the resistance to just being okay with that authenticity and that people would attract or not attract, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I grew up in a low income household to say the least. My parents both struggled with addiction. So like I had never seen this I had never seen entrepreneurship before. I had never seen good role models of these things. And I had this crazy relationship with money. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt that like I couldn't say no to anybody when I first started because I needed the money. And I had this like gross relationship with it to where I was like working with people who made me sad, who made me miserable, building a business that didn't feel like it was in line with my core values. It didn't feel like I wasn't able to show up in integrity. Anyways,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't feel good. And that I think is more of that survival mode too. Like I was so afraid of the financial piece of it that I was like clouding every other decision. And it's funny how when you all and again, I also hate that authenticity is such a trendy word because they're watering it down and it's not even authentic
Oh,
to
that's a
itself
very good way.
anymore.
Yes, you're watering it down to the point that now we need a new word.
Exactly. So insert new word for authenticity here. When I started leaning into that more is when that relationship kind of started to change too. And I was like, oh, okay. Instead of like begging for money from people who made me work too hard and didn't appreciate what they were getting, like I'm having to I'm definitely not saying no to money now, but I'm having to like reevaluate and make sure that the people I'm working with are aligned. And that's making more money come into the business because I'm attracting more of those people who want to work with me and see that the value comes from working with me and my company, not just from the like hard work that we're going to put in, because everybody gives you this, like everybody's going to give you hard work. And it's more about who you want to be working with through that process.
Yeah, and the you just hit on something I think is very, this is weird. Literally earlier today I talked about this on LinkedIn. The scarcity versus abundance mindset is like, it's scientifically researched to have a legitimate impact on us. And so that's this generational pattern we mentioned a while back. For you, of having to break what was kind of a scarcity, not even a scarcity mindset, but a scarcity existence. It was the only thing you knew, and really shifting that mindset into more an abundance, changing the relationship with money, and breaking that cycle.
Absolutely. And scarcity mindset is something I talk about a lot too. Like, I feel like I'm so glad we connected,
I
first of all.
know.
And getting to listen back to this episode later when I go re listen to it is going to be so fun because it feels like I'm just like talking with my bestie, like, because we're just so in alignment. So, super excited about this. But that scarcity mindset thing I talk about a lot because one of the main reasons that I truly believe one of the main reasons that I'm successful is because I give my best stuff for free. Like, I am so heart centered. I want to see
Why
everybody
did I know
thrive,
you were going to
even
say
if
that? Yes. You're all
I,
listening to the best first friend date ever, by the way.
yes, 100%. I'm going to fly out and visit you after this. It's
Come
fine.
on over.
I am terrible on skis, but we will make it
We'll
happen.
make it happen.
Cool. So, not like when I see people who are like, "Oh, I can't talk about this thing in my business because that's my thing." I'm like, "No, there's so much room for all
Yeah.
of us to be successful. Like, take all my stuff. Like, if that's what you want to do with it, that speaks more about you than about me, but like whether we're
Yes.
working together or not, like I want you to thrive. So I give away more than I probably sell, and that's okay because it just feels really good to me, and I know that I'm running my business in a way that I sleep like a baby at night. I
Yep.
don't question my own integrity at the end of the day.
Yeah, we live, and this kind of goes back to survival, societal norms. The way I used to think about it, TLDR on me is I used to be, and many people who listen regularly, is I used to be an engineer, and that was my big pivot, was that I was dying as an engineer because it was only half of my brain. And I remember when I made the big move out of both engineering and both moving from the East Coast to Colorado, people were like, "Oh my gosh, you're getting to do what I've always wanted to do. You're living my dream." And I would just sit there going, "Well, you could do this too. Who am I? I'm nobody special. I'm just making decisions and taking a little bit of calculated risk to not stay in mediocrity." That's the thing. I feel like that survival mode can mask itself as just, I'm fine. And if you are a woman on this earth, the 4-letter F word, fine, and what it means, people. And so I guess I'm curious to you, of you see this now in this more like you're speaking in the personal professional development piece that has come with from all of this realization, is what are some of the patterns you see around people and women who are burnout, or they feel like they're stuck? They're at this point of pivot, but they won't do it for scarcity mindset or all these other reasons. What are some of those patterns or signs that you see?
This is a great question. And it's a great question because it does kind of show up the same way for everybody. And nobody sees it as what it is. So, for me personally, when I was starting to go through burnout, I realized that I stopped doing things that brought me joy because who's got time for that? So, I stopped reading, I stopped baking, I stopped cooking, I stopped hiking because I just wanted to like be on the couch and curled in a blanket because I'm just so mentally exhausted. I stopped pouring into my community. I stopped kind of like showing up in my community because I knew that they were going to call me on that and be
Uh,
like, "Hey, you're not, this doesn't seem like the you that you normally are. Why might that be? And how can we switch?" So I started to avoid anything that would shine a light on what I was trying to hide. And I feel like that shows up with a lot of the people that I'm working with now too. There's always this, well, I'll wait until I've got this much money in my bank account to do the thing,
mhm.
or I'll wait until my kid is this old to do the thing, or it's always like I'll wait until, and then the symptoms of that are just being super fried and tired and not wanting to do anything because you're just so like mediocrity is hard. Like people
Oh,
will say that it's the easy thing to do and it's hard because it drains your entire soul. Like if that's not your vibe. Some people really like that. Like I get to go to work, I clock out, I go home, I do the thing and that's totally cool. No disrespect on them. That's your vibe. Love that for you. It is not mine and
mm-mm.
it is not a lot of people's. And when they try and avoid that, it eats them alive to the point where they're just this like sad shell. And I hate to see people like that because it's actually not that hard. It's actually harder to stay in the stuck land than it is to do the thing.
It's so true. But we think for some reason, especially women, I think this applies to all people, but women especially, we're really good at shooting all over ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then the excuses, the perfectionism trap has been coming up a lot on No More Mondays lately. For those of you who are, in your middle-aged women, we all grew up with baby boomer parents, and there was just there was a generational pattern of like the perfectionism. Waiting, if you wait for the right time, guess what? Newsflash, spoiler alert, never gonna come. Because
Mm-hmm.
once that thing that was making everything else, fall into place arrives, there's another thing that you can say, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, now I'll wait until, the other kid gets to be kind of a certain age. And during that time, you are falling more and more into complacency. And that apathy is, I think, what you described as the like you isolate not only from people who are going to keep you accountable, but from the things that you like and that bring you joy, because it's just easier to like go inward. So I think if you're isolating, if you're avoiding the things that you enjoy and you start to see that apathy come, it's a really big sign that it's time to make a shift.
110% could not agree more.
So speaking of pivots, by the way, you have a little thing called the pivot method.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about it. Tell me all about it.
Okay. So the pivot method is something that I've been working on for a long time, and it wasn't something that I had when I went through and started making changes in my life. But when I reflect back, because I do things like this, where I go on podcasts or I speak on stages, and they want to know, like, what was the thing? How did you get here? What started it all? What was your how did you find the courage to get from A to B? And every time I see someone else answer that question, it's so polished and refined, and they're like, "Here's the thing," and I'm like, "Mine was a hot mess. Like it was not linear. It was upside down, backwards, side to side, all over the place." And so when I'm looking back and I'm saying, "Okay, what were the steps that I took to get there?"
Mm.
And in each low moment of my life where I had to make a change, I realized there were a few things that were kind of common through the whole thing. Also, I'm a giant Friends fan. So anytime I can relate anything back to that show, I'm going to. So it may or may not be slightly influenced by Friends. But
No
it's really
judgment.
just, I mean, if you want to judge, that's fine. But like cool kids watch Friends. It's fine.
Hey,
Um,
if you're my age, you had a Rachel at some point in your life. And if you know Friends, you know what that haircut is. So there you go. I had one in high school.
I literally was considering taking that picture to my salon like 2 weeks ago when I got my haircut. I was like, the 90s are cool again, right? Like I could
The
totally do
90s are so back
this.
again. You get that haircut, get a choker and a scrunchie, and you are like golden. All you need is a
Yes,
Nickelback t-shirt.
love that. May or may not have one of those too. No judgment. Uh, so the pivot framework is really all about how you can start from a place where you're not feeling in alignment anymore, where you're feeling that like pressure and start to make changes to move you to where you need to go or where you want to go. And it's all very internal. So it's about processing your emotions because that's a huge
Mm.
thing that I think a lot, especially women, men too, for sure. But women, I feel like, aren't given the space to process their own thoughts and feelings because they're so busy being the caregivers for everyone around them. So giving yourself grace and a time limit I found is also for me because when I start to unpack and process, I like to live in those places and like put on a sad Taylor Swift record and like really beat myself up a little bit. So having a time limit on how I'm going to process how I'm feeling right now is really important for me.
Mhm.
So we're going to process, which is the P in pivot. I is intuition. And this is something that has been this was the hardest one for me to unpack and try and like put together, because we're told like our whole lives essentially that like we shouldn't be listening to what it's always outside feedback. It's always don't
Oh,
trust
yeah.
yourself because I've been around for a lot longer than you, and here's my experience. And it's other people's like opinions that start to make you tune off from that intuition
Mhm.
piece, when like really what's right for you. You feel it. You've got that gut instinct that's like calling me to do the thing, and you're like, well, what if my mom told me I couldn't do this when I should dream smaller when I was 6 years old, and now that is hardwired into me.
Yep.
So trusting your intuition. V is validation, which I always like to express is not external validation. It's knowing you are it. You are you are that intro that someone gives you on a podcast. Like you are that girl,
Own it.
and owning it, because it's hard to do. It worked. Another thing that I feel like this is for everybody. Like society tells you like you can't have this ego, like you can't like don't have too much pride. It's so gross if you're like really into yourself, but also you are a magical stardust human being. Every single person is. So like own it a little bit. It's okay.
Yeah.
Uh, and then we get to O, which is optimism, which is something that I also struggle with because it's hard for me to see the light at the end of the tunnel a lot
Mm.
of times. I am my own worst critic. And so having optimism on your side and looking at things through like the lucky girl syndrome, which was like cool on TikTok, like what if the universe is conspiring in my favor? And having a little bit of that mindset, I think, really does go a long way. And then the T is tenacity, because we have to be stubborn a little bit at a time and not give up and keep pushing for the thing, because the universe is going to test us. Like, how much do
Mhm.
you want this? And then we do it. And then it works out and everything is great. But it's only because we had the power to not give up when things started to get a little bit tricky.
Yeah. Here's why I love this. Multiple reasons. One, every single one of these, I'm like, The intuition one I'll touch on for a second because I agree that we do not listen to our gut enough. And there's, again, if you wanted to talk about like scientific and making decisions based on fact, there's actually fact that your gut is a better decision maker in some cases than your mind. And there is a gut mind connection that is being studied and proven that intuition is actually a compass that you can
Mm-hmm.
trust. And I think that's what the validation is trusting the intuition that you're listening to. And also we talked about scarcity and abundance, big fan of the positive mindset, because what are you going to do? What's negativity in a negative situation going to get you, right? Nothing.
Exactly.
But what I love about I love a good framework is one thing. But the other thing I love about this is it's all internal and all mostly mindset. And entrepreneurship or stepping into your authenticity, whatever it is, in my mind, is 80% mental, 20% logistical. We tend to get the 80-20 rule backwards. But I love that this is all things that you can work through in your mind. And once you arrive at the T, you can go be tenacious to execute upon it.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to like when I was thinking about what advice would I give to my younger self, because that's kind of the way that I treat all of the people that I work with, is like what advice would I give to my younger self, and I apply that to the people that I'm working with. Um, and one of the things that I found was most important for me is to make sure that it was internal and it was all things that you could do for yourself, because I can't control what
Yes.
negative things have been pre-programmed into the people in my life's brains. I can't control their limiting beliefs that they're
Yep.
projecting onto me. So my internal self needs to be so much louder than theirs. So when they come at me, and I can just be like, well, watch me. And then, spoiler alert, all of my people 3 to 5 years later are like, hey, can you show me that thing that you were doing that one time? Because it is contagious. So
I like this idea of it's almost like proving yourself right. A lot of us go
Mhm.
into these things like, well, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to prove myself right, and go off of internal drivers, like you said, that you can control, because there is validity to feedback,
Mhm.
and to some extent, like keeping recklessness in check. Please refer to left engineering in the middle of the Great Recession to take a job at a single artist gallery. That was the beginning of my multi-point spiral, like you, that I cannot wrap into a pretty 6-word bow. But there is there's an idea of sounding boards, but being able to filter the information, because everyone in your life is bias, whether it's their own biases and, like you mentioned, Brittany, self-limiting beliefs that they have that they're going to project on you, or the bias for caring about you and therefore thinking they know what's best for you. They believe their bias are all out of positive intentions, but that may not be the case depending on what you're trying to do. So while we don't ignore it or run away from that feedback, you've got to be able to filter it through this internal process of something like Pivot in order to know what to do with it and how to move forward within your own like authentic goals.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree. And I do think that, like, early on when people were giving me quote unquote negative feedback, I do think they were all doing it from a place of love. I have a really great example when I named my business. It is a very SKF Practice Solutions is the name of my consulting agency, and it's very heartfelt to me. It ties into a lot of things. It's got meaning for me. And I was told by every professional out there to change the name because it's not marketable. It's not going to pop up on a Google search, all of these things. They were like, you need to change your name. And this weighed heavy on me for a really long time. And obviously, spoiler alert, I did not. And people know SKF Practice Solutions now, and they actually do Google search it because we've built a reputation for ourselves around that name, and it is who we are. And I don't regret for a single second not changing the name. And I do believe that the people who are telling me to were saying it from a place of love, but it didn't feel aligned to me. And I had to trust my gut on that one and make that decision. And it worked out pretty good.
Good for you, because I tell people all the time that you need to be connected to the brand you build, because it is, I mean, for me, mine are that it is the best thing I've ever created. I don't have kids, so no, I can't offend those little things. But like, it is the best thing I've created, and it is intimately part of me. And it's like naming a kid in a way. You want to really be connected to it. And so it didn't matter in the long run.
100%. I would actually probably change the name of one of my kids. I'm not going to say which one.
We won't tell them that until they're much older.
Exactly. But I would not change the name of my business. So
the truth always comes out on No More Mondays.
You guys got the tea here.
So let's talk to some people out there. I have a feeling we're already talking to them, but I want to speak directly into that person out there who feels stuck. Maybe the scarcity is getting the best of them. I'm immobile. I can't, what was the word I was talking about later? Holy cow, I totally lost my language over here. Apathy has hit, whether it's emotional, financial, whatever it is. What would you say to that person out there who's just sitting immobile and stuck?
So I am an all or nothing human being. So when I started my business, I rage quit my job in the middle of a week right before Christmas with $12 in my bank account and an overdue electric bill in my mailbox. And I had no choice, because I knew that if I kept waiting until that I would never. And that worked out really well for me. Now, I'm not saying that that's the right. Please do not go quit your job on Monday if you do not feel that is the right thing. Please do not
listen to Angie and Brittany, because we have very similar stories.
Yeah, I mean, it does work out for a lot of people. I will say that. I mean, do what you want.
When you have no backup plan B or safety net, you're kind of left with no choice. However, it's the riskier of the options.
Absolutely the riskier of the options. And maybe not the best method for everybody. Maybe not everybody is wired like that, and that's okay. But I do think this kind of stems back to shut off all the outside noise, listen to your intuition, and make a decision. And maybe it's not a huge thing, like I'm going to quit my job on Monday, but maybe it is on Friday after work. Friday's a terrible day. Maybe on Wednesday after work, I'm going to take 1 hour and I'm going to do something that lights me up and lights my soul on fire. Because when I am doing that one small thing, it always seems to have this beautiful ripple effect of, okay, well, this one thing is making me really happy. I want to chase a little bit more of that. And maybe now on Tuesdays after work, I'm doing the thing too. And you show up different at home for your spouse, for your kids. You show up different at work because you have this thing that is that fire in your belly that's motivating you to to do all the things and it's bringing you joy, it allows you to show up differently. And then taking the next few steps don't seem as hard or as scary.
Yes. You don't have to burn it all down in order to make a pivot, but you have to change at least something to start. And something that gets you fired up can be a really, really great anchor to that.
100%. Again, I love the burn it all down method, but I do totally understand that like there are people out there who are not as fortunate as I was in that situation. When I burned it all down, like my husband still had a job. Like worst case scenario is he's gonna have to pay my bills for a little bit. Sorry, guy. And I understand that not everybody is in that privilege of a space and they're working with a different set of circumstances. But I also just want to remind even the people who are in those circumstances where it's not that simple, that it is more simple than you're telling yourself that it is. And if you just trust where you're supposed to be, you will get there, even if it takes a little bit longer.
Trusting yourself is maybe the hardest, but most rewarding thing you'll ever do. And as we unfortunately start to wind down this conversation, which is probably going to continue for like an hour offline, y'all, just so you know, I want to remind you that pivoting doesn't require burning it all down. You can scale, you can start, and you can scale without selling your soul. You can build a system that supports you. You don't have to take the things that strangle you. And whether you're leading a team, launching something new, or just ready to stop being burnout on a life that doesn't fit, I love that Brittany is here to prove that big shifts can start with a small move or the cut the cord, whichever feels right for you. But really our message is that all you really have to do is start. And so, Brittany, here's my big last question for you is, let's say somebody knows they're ready for that pivot. So they're one step beyond the previous inaction and scarcity, and they want to take a really intentional first step. Maybe they're already doing the small thing and they're ready for maybe a bigger small thing. What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that I would not be where I am today if it were not for community and for finding like-minded people who can help you grow in that trajectory and help you see things that you do not see in yourself, because that negative self-talk is still there whispering behind you every step of the way. And if it weren't for the people that I have in my circle, I wouldn't be here. I used to refer to my life as like, when I would go do entrepreneur things or speak on stages or go to masterminds, I would call this like my fake life. And then when I would go home, that'd be like my real life. And it wasn't until a friend of mine said, like, you know, this is your real life, right? Like, this is not like, this is part of your life too, that I stopped bridging that gap and was able to like say, oh, this stuff can follow me home and I don't have to turn it off when I get there. Oh, that was like a huge moment for me, and it wouldn't have happened without community and having those people in my life. And they're not local. Like one of my best friends lives in Canada. My other best friend lives in Florida, and we're all over the map. And because we have the internet now, which is beautiful, like this community doesn't have to be like the 3 girls that hang out at your gym. It can be anybody anywhere that has a common interest with you. So don't be afraid to branch out.
Community, life and business are better shared. I say 100. It all the time. And it is, and again, it goes back to that idea that even if you're in the scarcity stuck state, if you disconnect from community, you're never going to get anywhere, because sometimes you need the encouragement that comes from that. And Brittany, I love the example that you gave, because in a way someone gave you permission to give yourself permission to own it, which is huge. And sometimes just as much as those negative biases come in, it can be that tiny positive little inkling from a community that makes all the difference. And so I think our first 2 moves here are start small. And maybe that start small needs to be to find a community who can help you then start medium. I love it. So if people want to be in community with you, Brittany, how do we find you and stay in touch with all of your wonderful things you're doing, teeth and otherwise?
Teeth and otherwise. So as I mentioned before, I am a burn it to the ground girly, and I deleted my Instagram and started a new one in January. So I would love if you would come hang out with me on Instagram, so I'm not just like yelling into the void all the time. It's Brittany.Rogars on Instagram, and you'll find lots of Taylor Swift references, pink sparkles, all sorts of like this conversation on steroids all throughout there. I would love if you would hang out with me there. You can find me on my website as well, which is BrittanyRogars.com. If you are a tooth nerd, first of all, we should find me on LinkedIn because we should connect there too.
Yes.
But I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the places with SKF Practice Solutions.
And we'll link everything here today. And obviously, if you're listening on LinkedIn, hop over and find Brittany. She and I are connected and you can follow along with her. But I believe that if you follow her Instagram, it will give you a nice counter to the how much dirt, paint, home renovations, and outdoor adventure can Angie give me. So when you need a little pink sparkle and Taylor Swift instead of, outdoor life lessons and red dirt, it'll be a nice relief. And for all of you listening out there, whether you're stuck, whether you're currently building or scaling, wherever you're at, I still want to challenge you to think about a bold move you've been putting off. Oh, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself. A bold move you've been putting off, whether because you think you need a full plan, the perfect time, the kids need to leave the house, you need $10 more, whatever it is, what's that bold move you've been putting off, and what small, tiny thing can you do to inch yourself forward? I'm even going to take the challenge further and tell you to DM me a comment and tell me what it is. Bonus if me or Brittany can help you. Brittany, thank you so much for being here and just connecting. And now you're stuck with me because we are forever going to be in community.
I am so happy to hear that.
I love it.
Thank you for having me. This was
Brittany
great.
Rogars, everybody. I am Angie Callan, and this has been another episode of No More Mondays. Huge thanks to you, Brittany, for being here, showing up as you, and telling us exactly what it means to build with purpose, strategy, and a whole lot of heart. I'll see you all next week for another episode of No More Mondays podcast. Have a great week, everybody.